let's get some of the lads together. Let's have a go, yeah? Okay, yeah, all right. Go on, fellas. Get around a piano. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. You ready? Come on, you lot. Go on, then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team, the Radiants is their name. Stinsel Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight.
Morning all, how we doing? It's a fine morning up here in the Wolds. I keep saying that. I don't know if you see all the way in the distance there. My dog's made his way, you probably can't because of the sunshine. He's made his way miles over into the field. It's going to be a little bit of a short dog walk today. He's taking me on a different route up and down a couple of hills. But I thought I kind of wanted to touch base. Look, I'm not going to be going on about the Plymouth performance or the Accrington performance or comparing them or anything like that. You know, we are where we are. And there isn't any point, I don't think, on this Wednesday too much at looking back. We'll do that in the podcast. It's me and Chris this week on the podcast, so we'll be touching base. Plymouth looking ahead to a Morecambe double header as well, so that'll be quite interesting. What I was doing this morning, and I would love to say while I was doing something good, but it was actually while I was on the old porcelain pan. I was thinking quite a bit about the players that have really stood out for one reason or another, and I looked through some of the ratings that you guys have given the players over the course of this season, and you know, it's defenders on top all the time. It's not surprising. We've got some really good defenders, you know, across the back four. And I know there's been talk about us not having this wing back or that type of player, but actually we're probably only one defender short of just a top 2 or 3 League One defence, in my opinion. You know, it's probably that attacking right back. But quite a few players have jumped out at me for different reasons, and I wanted to pick 4 specific kind of genres or specific headers, and just pick a player out for each for you to chat about this morning. And maybe if you're watching, you might give me some feedback and what you think. So I wanted to pick the standout player from the season so far. There is one in my mind that is always up there. I've gone for an unsung hero, a player who probably at the moment is being overshadowed. I don't know if that's coming, that tractor's coming down here. No, a player that's probably being overshadowed by others, but who I think is going to go on to be, if we do anything this season, if we finish in 13th and people say, you know, this player or that player's done well, I think this particular player, the unsung hero, could well be in the top 3 of everybody's picks. I've gone for one with a lot of exciting potential based on his appearances this season, and I have gone for most disappointing, but in true Stacey West style, I've got a positive spin on that as well. But first of all, I wanted to draw your attention. Sorry, this is a hell of a hill. I've just come up, I'm out of breath. I'm quite fit now as well. So I want to draw your attention to form table. Now, a couple of years ago, it always used to get thrown at me when we were in bad form. You know, we'd be top of the table, but we'd be 6th or 8th in form, and people go, "Oh, you know, we're going to collapse." And I'd go, "No. You know, the only form table that matters is over 46 games." And to a degree, you know, that is right. I stand by that. But I think when you've had a new manager at the beginning of a season, it is interesting to take the last 10 games in different contexts, perhaps, to the first 7 or 8 games. And I think that's because, one, he's developing, he's changing, he's kind of evolving as a coach. The team is doing so. Signings have bedded in. And I think perhaps the last 10 games might be a fairer indication of where we are or where we're going compared to the first few games. Agree or disagree? I don't know. Let me know. So I've looked at the 10-game form table, and it's actually quite remarkable for Lincoln City fans. So on the 10-game form table, we're 8th in the table, which is, in my opinion, for our budget, punching above our weight. In terms of the opponents that we've played, we have had the second hardest set of games. So on average, the opponents that we've played have amassed 1.51 points per game. And I think there's only one team who have had a tougher run than that, which I think is Port Vale. We've conceded the third fewest amount of goals in those 10 games. And when you bear in mind that one of those games was the 6-3 at Bristol Rovers, we would have conceded the fewest, which I think is really important. And there are only 2 teams in the division who have lost fewer games than us over the last 10 than anybody, and that's Plymouth and Sheffield Wednesday, who have lost none and 1 between them. Other than that, we've lost 2, and that's level with the likes of Ipswich. I think it's really interesting to take that 10-game form table. You can make stats say what you want. I had that conversation with somebody on Twitter yesterday, and you can manipulate stats just like you can manipulate words. You can manipulate anything, I think, if you try hard enough. But if you try and just take a raw reading, if you were to look at the 10-game form table and Lincoln City are 8th, to an untrained eye, you would go, they're not in bad form. Not in bad form at all. So I thought that was particularly interesting, particularly with who we've played. And I just wanted to kind of go there before I go on to my little list of players, which I have got here. So I'm going to start with the most disappointing, if that's all right, because it is a negative for said player, but I also think there's positives to it. So for me, the most disappointing player thus far this season has been Jordan Garrick. Now, the reason that I've picked Jordan Garrick is he had a great debut. He really showed some kind of a great ability. I think it was Forest Green at home, wasn't it? And he came in and he looked like he would give us exactly what we needed on the flank. This is before Jack Diamond, before Danny Mandrew was fit, when we were looking really weak out wide. And he offered that respite. So he came in and, he certainly looked a lot better than, for instance, Hakeem Adelican did last season. So I think he set the bar quite high, really, before he got going. Scored, obviously, with a little bit of an instinct goal against Barrow, which, without that last gasp goal, we would have gone out to a League Two side rather than now be going away to a Premier League side. So his input hasn't been completely anonymous, but I think since then, his injuries haven't helped. He's been injured for 2 periods now. When he has come in, he hasn't quite looked up to the pace, and I think when we first signed him, and I remember looking over kind of his stats and his details, and it was, this is a kind of a strong winger. He's going to be like a Harry Anderson type. He's going to be a bulldog. We thought he looked like that against Forest Green. He might be able to play through the middle. There was talk from Swansea fans that he could play as an attacking wing back. I thought, he's kind of fitting all the holes here, isn't he? And physically, he's going to do it. And since then, he really, really hasn't. He's looked off the pace. Hasn't had a lot of opportunities. I think Jack Diamond coming in, Danny Mandrew getting fit have kind of helped keep him down the pecking order when he has been fit. But it's hard to label somebody as a disappointment after 17 games, because I've always said, again, when it comes to transfers, you should always think about where those players are after 46 games, or if you send them back indeed after however many games. But at this stage last season, we were saying the same thing about Dan and Underley, who came in and really struggled on loan. It's not often that we see a loan player go back in January. I don't think we will with Jordan Garrick. I think there's more to come from Garrick. I think once he gets fit, if we do go deep in the Papa Johns, you never know. Players like him are going to be invaluable, particularly as well if we get a bad winter and we have some cancellations and we're playing Saturday, Tuesday, he's going to be vital. But at this stage of the season, he's one that I probably would like to have seen more from. However, to spin that around, his form, which has been patchy at times, and certainly his injuries, have meant that Charles Vernon has got an opportunity that he may not have had had Garrick either been in form or been fit. Now, I think there's a positive there. First of all, Charles Vernon is our player. And whilst Jordan Garrick is out of contract at the end of this season at Swansea, it's my understanding they have an option on it. And so they could take that up. So it's not like he's going to be a free agent and we'd be able to just snap him up and kind of put him in our team as we signed TJ. And I know TJ wasn't free, but you get what I mean. But Vernon is our player. He's a player I think that can be exciting. I think we saw on Saturday he had a good game. Okay, he missed an opportunity to score, and had he scored that, I think Lincoln probably, we'd probably go on and beat Plymouth. but also he created, or he helped create the goal. I think he took the corner, he took the shot that led to the corner. So, you know, I think there's every positive in the fact that a lone player hasn't been able to reach his levels. That actually we've got a player of our own who's now come back to fitness after a tough start, who probably wouldn't have had that chance anyway. So that's Jordan Garrick. We will go on to, let me consult my list. We'll go on to exciting potential, because this is an obvious one. People are going to groan and go, here he goes again, because you know what it's like. I get my favourites and I fixate on them. I did it with Theo Archibald, for instance. I was really excited to see what Archibald could do. I did it to a degree with Danny Mandrew, and I'm certainly going to do it again here with the player who I think has got the most potential, or exciting potential in this squad. That's Jamie Robson. I've liked Jamie Robson since the first time I saw him play, and he clearly, looking at the type of player he is, fits a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 or whatever you want to play much better than he does a flat back four. With a flat back four, it's a more defensive role, and clubs at this level are happy to put long balls out to wingers who can now win headers, or wing backs that can now win headers. And I think if we're going up against a three, as we did, I think, against Fleetwood, and they had, was it Rooney out wide? And you try and put the ball on Rooney's head, he's going to out jump Jamie Robson, and people are going to go, oh, Jamie Robson's not tall enough to play that role. Play three at the back. The out ball is probably then cleaned up by somebody like Joe Walsh or Adam Jackson playing either side of a centre half, and it gives Jamie Robson the time to do what I think he's good at, which is get forward, put balls into the box. Now, we talk about stats saying what you want them to say. I had a conversation yesterday on Twitter, and it was about Jamie Robson, and I pointed out that his crossing accuracy was more or less identical to Toff and Teo Eden. I think it was actually slightly better, but he plays more crosses into the box per game, significantly more. Now, bear in mind, Toff and Teo Eden both played as on the right and left of a 4, not a 5, so you would expect him to get forward more. But in terms of percentages, I think when Toff had John Akindi to aim at, for instance, and there was even Tom Hopper to aim at for Teo Eden, Jamie Robson predominantly has had Ben House, who's not the sort of striker that you're trying to put the ball on his head. So I can understand why the accuracy in terms of numbers of crosses per game might be fewer. But if you think about it, if Harry Toffolo's doing 2 crosses a game and he's getting 25% accuracy, that means 1 every 4 games is met by a striker. Whereas if Jamie Robson's doing almost 4 per game, 25%, that means every single game he's putting the ball on a striker one way or another. So for me, actually, for him to be playing more crosses but have the same percentage, I think that's really positive. I think as an attacking fullback, he's got everything that we need to play in the 3. I think that it negates the need to go out and get another left-sided attacking fullback. I think Sean Rowan can do it, and I think in terms of exciting potential, you've got Sean Rowan on one flank, waiting to come on for Jamie Robson. It's a phenomenal looking left side, I think, and the criticism after Chippenham about not having fullbacks that can get forward was probably a little bit unwarranted. It's harder for a fullback to get forward in a 3 when you're coming up against sort of 2 banks, 4 and 4, and it's why when Lincoln under Danny Cowley used to play against teams in a 3, and they were rarer back then. For instance, Shrewsbury always used to play it. Our wingers never really got a lot of joy, but their fullbacks didn't either, and we used to tend to find that it was pretty much a stalemate. And I remember the 0-0 where Kean Bolger was sent off, which was just one of the worst games of football at Sincil Bank until we played Charlton this year. So certain formations cancel out, and then that makes the wing back look less effective. I think when we're coming up against other teams with 3 at the back, and Jamie Robson's playing on the left-hand side of that, I think that you can see his potential. He didn't play in the Scottish Premier League for no reason, and I know people question the quality of Scottish football, but Celtic and Rangers have both played in Europe this season. Jamie Robson provided a ball against Rangers before he signed last season that led to a goal, or scored a goal. I can't remember which one it was. So at the end of the day, we've got a really, really talented player there. He may have struggled to adjust to the pace of League One last season, but then when you look at some of the other players who we were told struggled to adjust last season, Sean Rowe and Max Sanders, I do think there was an element of certain players simply not having their face fitting at times last season. And I think Jamie Robson was one of those who found it very difficult to get back in the side. I think Sean Rowan might find it difficult to dislodge Jamie Robson now, but we shall see. So he's the one I've picked for exciting potential. And please do, if you've got any comments, do let me know. Just quickly, Owen Dawson's on board. Good morning, Gaz. Good morning, Owen. Cornell is on board. He likes Burnham. He's really impressed this season. I see him being involved with the first team. It's unusual for Cornell to be impressed with somebody, isn't it? He's a glass half full man, is our Cornell, and it's good to see. And Gav Hughes, morning, Gaz. What a game Saturday was. Atmosphere, everything about it was class. And Kev Sewell is still a clown. Well, I'm not so sure about that. I'm not going to start ganging up on Kev. I don't know him well enough, Gav. I hope you're not just sat in the van eating butties again, mate. You should be getting some work done. Those rooms won't build themselves, or whatever it is you're doing at the minute, decorating, I think. Anyway, let's move on. Unsung hero. So, unsung hero, I've picked a player who never really seems to get mentioned for man of the match. When you're talking, even, and Gav sits near me, to be fair, and we'll always say, who's your man of the match? And we'll all go around and kind of pick one. And this player very rarely gets mentioned. But if you look at the 10-game form table, how many of those games he's played in, it's nearly all of them. He's a consistent player. He's almost certainly the first choice in his particular position. And he's now kind of added a goal certainly to his tally. And I just think overall he's a player who could be huge for us. And that's Matty Virtue. Now, Matty Virtue's obviously here on loan. It's potentially one that could lead to a transfer in the summer. I don't know. But I suppose it depends how Blackpool do. If they come down, they might be looking for a player that's played 40-odd games in League One. Matty Virtue, if he stays injury-free, will do that. What I like about Virtue is he reminds me of a player who I use as a benchmark. When I think of midfielders, I think of three different types of midfielder. So I think of a 6 or a 4 or whatever you want to call it, the holding role of midfield. Let's not get too bogged down with numbers because of squad numbers. So you think of the holding role, you think of a Liam Bridcut, you think of potentially a Scott Kerr, players like that who tackle, break up, play it simple, go again, protect the back four. So I think that's the holding midfield role. Then you have your attacking midfield roles, your 10s, your 8s, maybe. Jack Payne was one, probably George Grant. I mean, George Grant could do both, but George Grant's best position for me was probably in that attacking midfield role, pulling the strings. Two very, very different types. Then you've got the midfielder, the central midfielder, the standard central midfielder, one who can play with the game ahead of him, or one that can play with the game kind of pressing the game forward, turning, watching, that sort of thing. He can play both roles and quite often has to. So you're talking about a box-to-box man. You're talking about Conor McGrandles. Possibly Conor McGrandles would class there. But for me, the benchmark for that player, and he played at a time when Lincoln City were not great, was John Finnegan. John Finnegan could do both. Didn't score an awful lot of goals. Seemed to think he only scored 1 or 2 for City, and then went to Cheltenham and instantly scored 2 in 3 games or something like that. But for me, John Finnegan was the ultimate central midfielder, standard central midfielder. You could play him in both positions, he would do it. You could play him just in central midfield, he would help whoever was playing around him. He made players around him better. He would create time and space for the players around him. like as Liam Bridcut did to a degree in the holding role, and I think Matty Virtue has the ability to do that. Max Sanders has been earning rave reviews recently, playing alongside Matty Virtue in a 2. If you'd asked me at the beginning of the season, before we signed Virtue, which of our central midfielders can play in a 2, I would have said none. Last season, you could only play as a 2 in midfield, arguably, if Bridcut played. For me, that's the level of influence that Virtue can have. He's not the same player as Bridcut. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is he's consistent. He's got an eye for goal. He's a workhorse. He can play a good pass. Boom, we're back. Sorry about that. So he's quite a forward, progressive player, and I think he's getting better and better. And if he's beginning to line up shots from outside the area, if he's going to be that player hanging around on the edge of the box, looking to pick up the ball, looking to put it in dangerous areas, looking to test the goalkeeper with a decent long range shot, which he can do, he's just going to be better for us. How he adapts to playing against the fours, for instance, four men at the back, four in midfield, or flat 4-4-2, or even playing in a more choked midfield, is going to be interesting. There have been games where we've completely lost the midfield battle, and that's led to us losing games. There have been games where Virtue has been, and Sanders have been, instrumental in us winning games. I think Ipswich and Barnsley, they were the pairing in the midfield. Max Sanders could easily have gone under my player with most potential. I almost feel crass in claiming that Max Sanders has potential. We know what he can do. He's just being given a chance to do it. But I think he does it better alongside Virtue. If we do go back to three in midfield, it doesn't matter who you bring in, whether you put Sanders further forward, put someone next to Virtue, whether you have a proper holding midfielder like Davenport and have Virtue further forward, he could play in either of those positions. Really like Matty Virtue, unsung hero at the moment. Cornell poses a question: is Matty Virtue proving Mike Clappleton wrong on him not being part of his plans? He's probably actually helping Max Sanders prove to Mike Clappleton that he was good enough to play. Steve Turner says, glad you're on board with Virtue. Thought it since we first saw him. Yeah, I think his first game was Cambridge, wasn't it? And it was questionable. And he hasn't been as consistent. We haven't seen him able to influence, for instance, games like Accrington, where you'd hope to see somebody's class coming through. But I do think that he's getting better and better every game. I did see another one there as well. Also here, Kev McCarthy, Powdy very consistent now. Originally, when I was planning this I was actually going to say, talk about best summer acquisitions. And it was between, at the moment, Virtue and Powdy. And that's, bearing in mind Jack Diamond's part of that and Danny Mandrew's part of that. But I think Powdy O'Connor has formed part of something that people say you've got to have to be a success at this level: spine. And Powdy has become part of a spine of the team. He's become one of the first names on the team sheet, in my opinion, like Virtue. And when you've got that, Rushworth, O'Connor, Virtue, you've got the spine of the team beginning to form. For me, that's when you know that you're building something. Not just looking at a 10-game form table, which helps, but you think Powdy O'Connor is on course for 44 games this season, maybe 45 games this season, barring suspensions and that sort of thing. Huge. Didn't have that from, I don't think, any of our centre-halves bar one last season. That brings me on to the most outstanding player of the season so far. And it's not going to be a surprise, I don't think, to anybody who I've picked. Certainly won't be a surprise to any of you. I've gone for Regan Poole. Regan Poole is... I've just noticed something here, and I hadn't seen this before. Emma Krellin says, saw at the fans forum, Virtue said he wasn't going back to Blackpool while the current manager was in his post, so could do with MA hanging onto his job. Well, that's interesting. It would be a surprise to me if Appleton does hang on to his job till the end of the season. But if he does, then Matty Virtue could be asked. What a signing that would be. So let's go back to Regan Poole, outstanding player. For me, I think that we're all resigned to the fact that Regan Poole is going to leave the football club. It's just whether he goes and we get a small nominal fee for him. This is interesting. Sex Chat Site is watching us. There we go. New site with the girls. How exciting. Fuck off. It's just whether we get a fee for him or whether he ends up kind of going for free. I think either way, we did sign him for a nominal fee. Does he owe us anything? He carried us at times last season. This season, I just think he looks outstanding. I mean, his aerial duels on Saturday was unreal. Not just in how many he contested, but how many he won. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was, topped the league on the weekend by no doubt at all. And aerial duels contested and percentage won. But it's not just that, is it? He played attacking right back. He got down the flanks. He put some balls in. He was a constant threat. He tested the goalkeeper at one point. You want him to play on the right side of centre-back, no problem. He'll tackle. He'll harass. He's the perfect captain. I stood by the manager's decision to pick Tom Hopper as captain at the beginning of the season. I think it was because why he picked Tom. However, hindsight now proves the people right who were saying it should have been Regan Poole, because it probably should have been Regan Poole. I'll happily hold my hand up and go, do you know what? I got that wrong. He has been superb. There's been very, very few games where Regan Poole has been below a 7. Probably you'd look at Peterborough maybe. But think back to the Ipswich game, the clearance off the line that he then celebrated like a goal. You think he's a great football player. He's a really, really good football player. He could play in the Championship with ease. He could move to a Hull City or a Preston North End or somewhere like that and probably impact the first team straight away. Anthony Scully hasn't been able to do that at Wigan. Wigan signed Regan Poole. I guarantee he would be playing first team football there within weeks of signing. Adam Butler says, do you see the club trying hard to sell Poole in Jan as opposed to losing for nothing in the summer? Sadly, yes, I do. I do see that. I think the way that we work at the minute, we have to turn a profit for our footballers. And, if Regan Poole, we paid, let's say, a nominal fee. Let's say we paid 20 grand for him from MK Dons. If we then were able to get a Wigan or somebody come in and say, well, we need him for our fight against relegation, we'll give you 80 grand, 100 grand. You take it. Is he worth that? It's probably worth 500,000 if he was contracted for the next 4 years and a club wanted to buy Regan Poole. You'd be looking at £500,000 at least. And that's only because it's one of those unsexy positions, isn't it? Versatile defender. You only have to look at a boy that went from Luton to Leicester a few years ago. Is it Justin? A couple of £1 million. Younger, more attacking, but still a fullback. I can see Lincoln trying to sell Regan Poole in January if the rumours are correct that we don't have an option. Seems to be a lack of clarity. I think some people think he's out of contracts. Others say there's a potential that we have an option for a year, as we did, I think, with Anthony Scully. So we'll see. It's unclear. And yeah, that's like a lot around the club and around football these days, isn't it? Contracts, transfers, fees. It's unclear to the likes of us because there's more of us picking over the carcass. There's more of us producing content like this. So the more people are doing it, the less information kind of comes out because it's the less for us to pick over and criticise and use as weapons against the club. Not that I would, but some people might. So I understand it. I do. So that's that. 4 players. Most disappointing, most underrated, most potential, most outstanding. Interested to know what yours are. Hit me up on Twitter. Let me know. I might even do a written article about it. I do have some written articles coming up. I've got a player who played for both us and Morecambe. That's being done now. I've also gone through, because this is what I do in my spare time, all of our League Cup matches since the very first one against Bradford Park Avenue. So I've gone through all of those and worked out who we've drawn the most, as in come out of the hat against, who we've played the most over replays and 2 games, who we've beaten, who we've defeated, lost, who we've drawn with, penalty wins, goals scored, all of that. Just to put an article together. Probably use it in the run up to Southampton, if anything. My Patreons will know that they've had an opportunity to set a bit of a blueprint, a bit of a framework for future articles. So I'm going into the library on Friday to research some of the articles that they've suggested that I do. I've got a day off for my birthday at the weekend. So that's that. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to just stand here and answer a couple of Cornell's questions, because he always asks plenty. Let's have a look. Do you see Kennedy going all out for a striker in January? I think he might want to bolster the attacking options, Cornell. I can't see him going all out for one. I think it'll be part of a robust and rounded approach to recruitment. Don't think we're going to break bank. Don't think we're going to spend big money or anything like that. Whelan from Carlisle being a replacement for Regan Poole. I think that they would hope that actually TJ Ioma is the replacement for Regan Poole and either Jay Ben steps up. Because on the 2-for-2 model, as we say, if you've got Ben and Ioma as right back, you've got Rowan and Robson as left backs, you've then got Paul, Walsh, Monsma, Jackson, O'Connor, or a centre back over. So we're probably one player over what the model that they want is. So I can actually see them thinking that our replacement is already in the squad. People didn't like that about Scully because the replacement, Mandrew, was already in the squad, or Jack Diamond was already in the squad. But actually, when they're fit and come in, we didn't miss Scully. It's only with the injuries. So I think that's interesting. Finally, another one from Cornell. Is Paul suited to a right back rather than a centre back? The thing with Paul, I think, is he can play either. I know Gab Sutton was really kind of vocal that he was a right back, a centre back. I thought he was more of a right back. I think he's proven he can play both. So Right, I'm coming up to the road. Charlie, just wait. So I'm going to have to go, put the dog on the lead, go and do some real work. Thank you all for watching. Cornell, sorry, DC Van Veen coming to Lincoln City. Not in a million years. Not in a million years, Cornell. Not the sort of player we'd sign. I've heard he's disruptive. He's got a bad attitude. Age-wise, he doesn't fit. There's no way Kevin Van Veen comes to play for Lincoln City. If that happens, this hat I'm wearing, I'll eat it. I'll eat it live on the show, or I'll at least try. It might be a bit chewy. No chance. So anyway, thank you all for joining. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Charlie, wait. And I'll catch you all again soon. Take care. Bye.